But I remember my sister, Hope, she's second in line. So it's almost a 5-year age gap where we were so poor. My stepdad, he would go fishing and we would eat, fish and grits. So, now, fish and grits is like, everybody comes to New Orleans and they want fish and grits. But my sister was like, fish and grits again? That we was, it changed up a little bit with fish and corn. So, we were taught, long as you had some staples in the house, potatoes, rice, you won't have a hungry day, and it's true.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, my name is Andrew McClendon. I'm your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Ingrid Thibodeaux, CEO of Citi Approved Enterprise. Ingrid, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew.
I'm glad you're here and looking forward to your story. So why don't we start with you telling us what Citi Approved Enterprise does today?
Oh, sure. Citi Approved Enterprise is a full-service construction company, so I'm a general contractor operating in the areas of roofing, renovations, and maintenance.
And you do those in residential,
commercial and federal
work as well. So, yes. So let's dial it back right here early on, and why don't you tell us where you grew up and what your early childhood was like?
Sure. I grew up primarily in Marrero, Louisiana. After my parents' divorce, we relocated from New Orleans to Algiers, should I say, to Marrero. And I'm the eldest of 5 girls. And so technically my mother, after the divorce, she struggled financially for a while. And she worked.
All 5 girls stayed with mom?
All 5 girls stayed with mom, and she remarried. So 2 was from her first marriage and 3 with my stepdad. Yep. So she, worked as a cashier, and my stepdad did some concrete work, but he was more of a handyman, jack of all trades. So we struggled financially, so I got teased a lot in school because my mother couldn't afford to buy the chick jeans, the Jordache. And I wore a lot of, hand-me-downs from neighbors, family, friends. We were clean, and we always had food to eat. But I remember my sister, Hope, she's second in line. So it's almost a 5-year age gap where we were so poor. My stepdad, he would go fishing. And we would eat, fish and grits. So, now, fish and grits is like, everybody comes to New Orleans and they want fish and grits. But my sister was like, fish and grits again? That we was, it changed up a little bit with fish and corn. So, we were taught, long as you had some staples in the house, potatoes, rice, you won't have a hungry day. And it's true.
Yeah, that's great. So, your stepfather being a handyman, you grew up maybe learning a little bit about construction?
No, absolutely not. Dance team, cheerleader, I didn't care nothing about construction.
So Hurricane Katrina plays a pivotal role in the creation of your business, but I'm curious what you were doing prior to Katrina.
Oh yeah, I worked as a waitress. So I worked for a little bit at the casino. I was a cocktail waitress. I did banquets. But when Katrina happened, I was doing a la carte for a restaurant, actually one of the Brennan's families in the French Quarter. So I did that for 18 years, and I always wanted to escape it, but I just didn't know how as a single parent. How do you give up guaranteed income to, for me, I thought I would be an event planner, something like that. So when Katrina happened, we relocated to...
So you lost your job, right? I mean, everything, New Orleans shut down.
It shut down, and we wasn't sure what happened. But yes, I ended up losing my job, and I relocated to Lake Charles. And then literally we were at a hotel repositioning our stuff to the house we were renting that we found. And then we had to evacuate for Rita.
So Hurricane Rita struck just weeks after Katrina?
Yes, and we were a direct hit in Calcasieu Parish.
Oh, my goodness. So within 1 month, you were hit twice.
Yes.
But the first being the largest natural disaster in the country up to that point. And so what happened after that?
After that, I was able to still live in the place. So I stayed in Lake Charles for 3 months. And I would travel back and forth to try to find a place to live so I can get back home. And I was able to locate something in Marrero, a house, moved in it, got settled in, really, kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I knew I can go back to Dickie once things picked up.
Dickie
Brennan's. Once we reopened.
Which restaurant were you at?
Dickie Brennan's. Yeah, I was at Dickie Brennan's. Yeah. And they did reopen a year later, but by that time I had, formed Citi Approved. And then I started seeing the news with a lot of contractors fraud. And I had some colleagues from work that were gutting out homes. And with them gutting out the homes, they were like, oh, we're just making all of this money. And still I didn't try it. But then I saw people crying on television. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't take someone money and not finish the job. But I didn't know anything about construction. So fear kicked in, the anxiety, the self-doubt. And I just decided I'm going to do it afraid. Isn't that what courage is? Yeah. So I decided to do it afraid. I went to Home Depot, bought some books on roofing, drywall, how to calculate those things, and learn how to estimate the projects. And had a friend that introduced me into like one of the adjusters programs called Xactimate to help me, learn how to price out my jobs. And my first client was my mother. Go figure. So she had roof damage, and I was actually going to work with someone. And then she was like, you're my daughter, I'm going to give you a shot. So I figured if her roof leaks, she'll forgive me and she'll give me a chance to fix it without going to the licensing board on me. So
had you gotten your license?
Not yet. I mean, I had registered with the Secretary of State and had formed the name, but, and had a home improvement, but did I have insurance and other things? No, not yet.
Yeah. Typical startup, you're just trying to figure it all out on the fly.
Trying to figure it out.
Right. So, but your mom had a roof repair job, right?
No, replacement.
Okay.
But to take the entire roof off.
Oh, it was shingle roof?
Yeah, it was a shingle roof, yes.
Mm-hmm. But not the wood structure, or was it just a shingle?
Well, when you say, I'm sorry, so when you say wood structure.
The rafters and the...
Oh, yeah. But no, we didn't have to take off any sheeting or repair any rafters. So we just removed the existing roof. And if they had any damaged sheeting underneath the roof, then we changed out the damaged sheeting. Yeah. Because you got to fight with the insurance companies, right, how it go.
Yeah. So you were telling me a story before we started about your stepfather was giving you some advice about finding subcontractors?
Actually, my late dad.
Oh, your late dad did.
Yeah, my dad. He said, he was like, all right, if you're going to do this, he said this is what he recommended. He said because he built his home, and he said to me that to go in really nice residential neighborhoods, there's a lot of construction going on, ask for cards, and get the cards, you interview the guys, and that's how you want to try to start building your relationship with the subcontractors. So I took his advice, and I ran into quite a few that was, of course, putting on roofs,
right,
and got some cards, and that's how it started.
So you were able to get a quote from them, and then you supervise the work.
Right. They came over, did measurements, and I had learned all that. So I knew how to do measurements to make sure that they wasn't, it's 30, you got 30 squares, but they're going to tell you it's 34 squares.
Right.
So I understood how to, estimate and measure the roofs. And actually, my mom, her pitch wasn't that high, so at that time, I didn't have fear, and my knees weren't bad either, like they are, gravity. So I got on the roof, and I actually sat up there with him. Yes.
That's great. And then you did some other roof work after that as well?
Let's see. I did a few, but my biggest client was Miss Carol. When I first started, she had been a victim of 2 contractors, and
so they would show up in a time of disaster, promise to deliver, and maybe get some type of down payment, right, and then never show up again.
Show up once or twice,
yeah,
and not show up, right, and don't deliver. And we met a few times because her budget. I understood she was a victim, but I was like, all right, your budget needs to be my budget, and we met a few times. And the second week I was on the job, she cried. She said, I cannot believe that you got this much work accomplished in 2 weeks, and I couldn't get 2 contractors to complete in 8 months. So I knew then, all right, it was a feel good.
Yeah,
it was a feel good. Like, for me someone that goes from sleeping in a room with 5, it's 5 of us sleeping in a room together, sharing beds together, to literally starting a company with no experience to having that type of impact on a client, and we still talk today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's so rich, that you started in fear. But you were going to go into it, and you weren't just trying to create an opportunity for yourself, because your previous employment of like 20 years being a waitress was wiped out. You're going to find not only employment, but you're going to gainfully employ other subcontractors. But most importantly, you're going to take care of the people and deliver where they were getting taken advantage of.
Oh, yes.
And that had to feel really good.
Great. And women. I mean, they preyed on single women.
Yeah. What happened next?
So I had work, but around 2007 or 2008, the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Work slowed up. It dried up. My bank account dried up. And I had $800 and a good name. And I asked my dad for help. So when I told him I had amassed over $70,000 worth of debt, he was like, oh, you got yourself in a pickle. So I was like, yes. So he, asked how much time I needed. And I told him it was about 18 months. And he helped me pack up. And my son and I moved in with him. And I started working on reducing my debt. And I got my adjuster's license, so I worked as an insurance adjuster. I went and worked Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Irene. I think Irene was first, and both of those were in the New York, Jersey area. And to just anywhere I could make extra money to not file bankruptcy on the company. And I had, I was advised, file bankruptcy. But I knew I wanted to work for the federal government. And I'm like, the right thing to do is pay it back. And I had to make the sacrifice and not be self-sufficient anymore. But it taught me, how to, manage my money financially. Yeah. And I took courses with that as well.
So learning that Xactimate early on in business of how to estimate for your projects served you well when it went to go do the adjusting on the hurricane. So you knew how to use that program and how that worked.
Yes.
So when did you get back on your feet?
I moved in Gretna in my apartment that I am in now in December of 2010. Worked for my dad. He had a courier company, and I worked part-time with him just to keep some income going in. And then I got a roof contract, residential. My son navigated that with his high school sweetheart mom. She's like, I got to get a roof. And he's like, oh, my mom does roof work. And I landed that contract. So put a roof on. And it took me 4.5 years to get out of debt. And honestly, when I say get back on my feet, where the business was able to survive. I mean, I worked from home for 10 years. So I ran a home-based business, and I wore all of the hats. And I don't think I shared this with you, but I would love to add this. When I started my business, I didn't even know how to copy and paste. Yeah, I didn't know how to copy and paste. Yeah. So I had no technical, I could send an email, and if he's like, oh, copy and paste, and I was like, what's copy and paste? And, so I was completely ignorant to a lot of things, yes.
This podcast is sponsored by NAI Latter & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Latter & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. Turnkey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. So during this next phase of your business, you start to really get your house in order as far as licensing and certifications and all the things that you need to get you to the next phase of your business, right? Let's talk about that.
Sure. In order to, bid on the commercial side, you have to have your contractor's license. So the first test I took, I decided to go for the my general construction license. So, and that was under the commercial side, and I failed the test. I got intimidated, so I didn't take it for a couple years. But I also understood that if I brought someone else into the company that had the license, if it didn't work out, they can take the license with them. And now the company doesn't have a construction license, and now I can't bid jobs. So it took 3 tries.
You knew you had to get it.
I had to do it. Yeah. I had to do it. So I passed the business law the first time, but the construction part of it and the numbers.
Honestly, there's manuals to study by, but still, there's nothing that replaces the experience, and you got to get the experience to succeed on the test. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Right, and they asked me something about, I think if the chemicals wasn't balanced in a swimming pool, what do you use? And I was like, I don't know. I never built a pool. I don't know. So, you have those type of questions on the exam, and it's multiple choice, but it's tricky.
Right, for sure. It is definitely tricky.
It's tricky.
I've taken license exams all over the country, and some of them are surprisingly tricky. But you worked on your other certifications as well?
Yes, my woman-owned, which is the woman-owned small business certification is through the Small Business Administration. They call it WASB. So that gives me opportunities to bid on set-asides for woman-owned small business. That's actually my niche. I find myself to be very competitive in that area. So I've been very, successful on when I bid, on being able to. I was told we don't win bids because I used to say, "Oh, I was I won a contract opportunity." It was like you put work in. You was the successful bidder. So I've been very successful at bidding on woman-owned contract opportunities with the federal government. For
sure. So the 8A set-aside program, you did. Enter that program?
Yes, I did.
And I've learned a little bit about it through this podcast, and I'm really intrigued with it because a couple of gentlemen that I'm thinking of that utilize that in their business, when they described it to me, it just seems like an excellent program, to help minority business or a WBE, get the experience that they need. But it's a program. Tell us about how that program works.
Oh, certainly. So it's a 9-year certification, and it seems like 9 years is a lot of time, but it moves really, really fast. Yeah. But for small businesses, it's a program that most small businesses, we couldn't afford to pay for the training. So there's a lot of free training there, but it gives us access to non-compete contracts. Right. Up to, in construction now, $4.5 million per single contract. And for the first 5 years, you can, have 100% sole source opportunities. And then they start weaning you off the program, and they want you to, because they want, they don't want you to just rely on sole source opportunities. They're there. It's a business development program. Right. So they want to grow you. So when you exit the program, you'll still be successful at bidding and still be able to stay in business.
You've learned. You've got the opportunities. They've set it up for you to continue on the path to success. But there's a timeline, and you have to exit. And the whole purpose of this program is to get you up in there, and then you keep flying.
And you keep flying.
I love that. I mean,
it's a great program. Yeah.
And so, and so that is when you started to expand into federal services and federal contracts. So talk us through what that looked like, your first federal job, and then how your trajectory went from there.
Sure. So my first federal contract opportunity that was a sole source was with the Coast Guard out at, we call it NOLA Base out in New Orleans East. And that project, we had to replace some office furniture and do some electrical work. So that gave me some level of past performance. Right. And I found that the federal government, if you capture everything, it's pretty profitable. Mm-hmm. And so from 2014, it was still slow because you have to market. Nobody's just picking up your phone and say, here's a sole source. You have to travel and you have to market and you have to spend money. So I did a lot of time investing in myself. And because I understood the money management side of it, I just, ran a very lean and mean operation, working from home for 2 years, whatever extra money I had, I saved. And I literally, I had got to know debt, which I was excited and proud to say. For sure. So not having any debt, when I crunched numbers, I learned how to do that, the budgeting thing. It ended up, I was able to live off of $22,000 a year. Wow. So I kept investing in my company. And it was draining, honestly, Andrew. There were times where I had to pray, and I was like, just, God, I need a break. Because I was, I started comparing myself to some of the others, because you see what they're doing, and you're marketing, and you're like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? But a lot of it is relationships, too. Yeah. And you have to, but by the time you make that relationship, you've lost about 5 years. If you don't have it coming in.
Yeah. And the clock's ticking on
the
your
clock
program.
The clock is ticking. And then you have to have bonding. So you can't get these $4.5 million if it's construction without having a performance and payment bond.
Right.
So you have to get through that part of it.
Which is a contingent on your financial strength, right? They're only going to bond you for whatever amount you may qualify, right?
Correct.
So I was curious, Paul, during this process, did you, in growing your business, which was a multi-year process, right? Did you have any mentors that you you could rely on for advice along the way?
I have, yes. Well, Angelina, even though she was IT, she would, just keep showing up when I could not afford groceries. She would find a project at her home, literally, for me to do. So she definitely was a very strong mentor for me. But because she was a graduate of the 8A program, she helped me navigate a little bit. But a lot of it, I had to find out on my own or get from SBA, because no one really wanted. I had to figure it out through trial and error. Because the boys are not going to teach you how to compete against them. So a lot of it was through, like I said, trial and error.
So how did you expand your services? I can see easily how you could go from roofing to furniture installation. But how did you expand your services beyond that?
Well, taking training and talking to my BOS, which is my business opportunity specialist, they want you to diversify. Mm-hmm. So I developed a really strong relationship with the Coast Guard. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in some service contracts. Do you have any landscaping? And they said, well, actually we do. And we have a client that we're working with and we're not pleased with them. So, they told me to come take a look at the site. And I said, looks good to me. So they said, yeah, they stepped up their game. But then service went down again. So I said, all right, the one thing that I do in business is I outservice my competition, because it's good customer service is kind of going down the drain. Mm-hmm. And they gave me an opportunity to cut the grass. And what I did, I teamed up with one of the largest landscaping contractors in New Orleans, in Louisiana. So it's a win-win. It's a win. They couldn't get it because they're not the minority.
Right.
They're not the 8A.
Right.
I had the opportunity. I couldn't mess it up. I didn't have equipment, so I subbed the work out.
So you've had other opportunities beyond that. You've we were talking at break about your largest project. It was a civil project, and I think it's interesting to talk about that because it's one of those things that was probably a painful experience. It went south for you, but the story and how it ended was pretty classic. So you want to?
Now you about to make me itch. Nah.
It was that bad, huh?
Physically, literally, I had shingles.
The stress got so bad.
The stress got so bad.
So tell us what you teamed up with somebody.
I teamed up with someone.
And how big was the project?
8 figures.
It was an 8-figure project.
Yes.
And you had the prime contract on it.
Yes. Woman-owned small business.
Woman-owned small business. And you teamed up with, you had a partner you were teamed up with.
Mm-hmm. That I trusted.
And it didn't go well.
Didn't go well at all.
So what happened?
They weren't able to perform their scope of work, which was at least 85% of it. And eventually the government sent down what is called a cure notice. And that is you have 14 days to tell us how you're going to turn this project around, or you're going into default. Once you go into default, you can't bid on a federal job for 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
So it puts me out of business. So, again, it was one of those where I was panicking, but I had to do it afraid because I was dealing with a company that was large, that was dealing with over 100 employees, and I had 4. So I had to take it on. I had lawyers, and it was during the pandemic, 2020 kicked in, so we're dealing with a pandemic. I had just made the Inc. 5,000 the first time. I wasn't excited about that because I was, in the biggest fight of my life trying to save my company.
Yeah, when you're in that list, it all reads well, right? But that's based on your revenues. It's not based on your profitability. And right now, when this is coming out, what you're telling me is that you had what you just said, the biggest fight of your life going on. So you'd rather not even have that recognition at that point. Like, just go away. Let me clean this up. And let's revisit that another day, right?
You're funny. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I was feeling. So eventually, it's kind of, we're still dealing with it, but I brought in another partner that was able to complete the job. Successfully, and it was we built a little bit over 1,100 foot concrete guide wall for the Army Corps of Engineers.
And that's a big project.
Yes, and for me, I was like, if I don't make a single profit, all I want, I felt like I got in character, Tina Turner. All I want is my name. Yeah. I don't want anything else. I don't have to make any money. Just all I want is a good name.
Yeah, but you just summed up a really complex situation real tightly there in a few sentences. But to get a contractor who's not performing, a subcontractor, off a job and replace, that's a big deal, on that big of a project. So I understand what's involved in that, and what you just said was volume. So the fact that you were able to execute on that and get out of that project, and as you told me, the project finished successfully.
Yes, it did.
And
I am proud to say it.
Yeah, and you saved your name.
And I saved my name and my company.
Yeah.
I would have went out of business.
Yeah, that's great. So you built up a list of federal customers on your website. You've got the Air Force, you mentioned that, Coast Guard, Wildlife and Fisheries, Department of Energy, Corps of Engineers, and the Federal Aviation Administration. So very impressive to look at your website and see all of that.
Thank you.
At what point did you exit the 8A program?
Well, I was blessed because I got an extra year during the pandemic.
Oh, that's cool.
Something that never ever done before. They gave us an extra year. So actually my graduation date was the day of the riot at the Capitol, January 6th.
January 6th, yeah.
So that was the day that I graduated, and then I got an extra, it's a year, but once I got approved in the system, it was 8 months. And that was also a blessing because the lawyer, that cost was eating me up from the fight, and I landed 2 7-figure sole source contracts after marketing for 4 years. It finally paid off.
Oh, wow. Tell us about those.
So those 2 projects, they were negotiated contracts with the Army Corps of Engineers, but we are operating out of Fort Polk on the Army base. So both of those are roof replacements. But we are putting on a new roof. It's a design for the Home of Heroes. So that's the name of the project. So the Home of Heroes building, we're putting on a standing seam metal roof, and we're doing, some minor HVAC and painting and metal repairs. And the other is we have 8 various buildings. So some of those we had headquarters. So all eyes was on us. We had to seal the windows, so remove existing caulking, and we had over 300 windows. Yeah, so the generals. So that was like really, really intense. But
so there's nothing small out at Fort Polk. I mean, there's nothing small in the quantities of whatever you do. It's a big place, right?
It is a very big place, but there are small, and when you say small, if I can ask a question.
Sure.
Small, when you say, as far as dollar amounts, are you asking, do we have 5 figures, 6 figures?
No, I'm just saying when they ask you to caulk windows, it's going to be a lot of windows.
It's going to be a lot of windows.
There's just a lot of everything out there.
I agree. It's a huge base.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I wanted to, as you look back over your career and you look at the projects you've done, what is it that you found the most challenging? I think you may have already addressed it. The big project, right?
The big project was very challenging, but navigating through the 8A program was really challenging.
Yeah.
Because the misconception is you're going to walk in, I got this cert, and you're going to give me 7-figure contracts. But you have to keep, because they want to do business with people that's going to deliver. They don't want defaults.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you've got to earn it. I mean, the fact that the program's set up and they'll start you at one level and they let you grow, but you're not going to get to that next level if you don't perform on the
if you don't perform,
level.
no.
Yeah. So the fact that it's intense and hard work, I mean, I think that's a good thing, right? Because otherwise it would be a giveaway.
I agree.
So which wouldn't particularly be fair to anybody, right? But again, from what I've learned about it, it's a great program, and it's helped.
Awesome.
It's helped a lot of people succeed. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm, offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. Ingrid, I wanted to ask you to define your management style. Some people lead by example and, are going to not ask their employees to do anything that they don't do. And other people are more, giving their employees more rope to run with and, not micromanage. How would you define your marketing style? I'm sorry, your management style.
My management style is a little relaxed and, give them enough rope. And I find myself, since I had to replace my assistant because of the pandemic that I had and relied on for 5 years, I had to train some new people coming in, and we have a shared office space. So I share space with them, and I'm noticing a lot of things, and I literally had to get a life coach to work with me and some counseling because I suffer from the disease to please. So because of that, it kind of, it goes into the business. And I realized that, the suffering from that disease to please is I'm afraid.
Yeah,
it comes from a place of fear.
If you're doing that with a client, that's one thing. If you're doing it with your employees, I think what happens is you end up taking on more of their work.
I do.
And which is detrimental to the business owner, but it's also detrimental to the employee because that's their opportunity to grow, right?
I agree.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and I've probably become more aware of that in the last 5 years or so, of the importance of, backing off and let the employees do their jobs, and
again, we want them to do their job.
Yeah. So 2023 is when that's all going to change, right?
Well, the accountability, because that's the thing. You have the talk, you have the talk, you have the talk. No write-ups, no accountability. So, they keep doing what they're doing, and I keep getting what I'm getting, which is no production.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about staffing and how challenging that has been for all business owners, and since the pandemic. But even in normal times, you have some employees that have all the experience in the world, mm-hmm. and maybe they lack passion or self-motivation. And then you have some employees that maybe don't have the experience, but man, they're so self-motivated, they're mm-hmm. passionate. When you look at given that situation, what's your preference? What type of employee would you go with?
The one with less experience and more passionate, because my first assistant that I hired when I moved in my office space a little bit over 5 years ago, because as I mentioned previously, I worked from home for 10 years. She worked at Walmart. She was a cashier. She had no experience, but she was motivated. And I watched her not miss shifts at Walmart. So when I got my office, I gave her a try, and she eventually ran the office.
Yeah,
she ran it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have a number of stories like that of employees that came in and maybe they were started as a laborer and then built up to be learn their way to be a carpenter and then a foreman, then a superintendent, then over years into the office as a project manager, and grew a career from they're coming to the office in a coat and tie, and it's a tremendous transformation. But I love seeing that trajectory of employees. But that to me is what is really important about our job as business owners, is managing our employees' careers so that they can make the most out of that.
And pay them a decent wage.
Right. Yeah, we have a very modest office, and the way I like to think about, I like to keep that cost down, mm-hmm. and the way I like to think about it is, in defining any success that we may have had in business, is don't judge me by my office, judge me by my employees' homes. Right.
I like that.
So if I can not put money in a big fancy office building, and instead put that money into the employees' compensation, mm-hmm. and then they can deploy that as they see fit. But that to me is far more logical than having a fancy business that really is just a big note that you have to pay, right? I mean,
it is.
It looks good, and it defines you as successful, maybe, but it's not necessarily the case.
That's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
Can I share something funny with you?
For sure.
So I just a year ago got a truck, right? But that was only because my Honda Coupe that was 12 years old got totaled right before 3 days before Ida hit. So most would say, how are you running a business in a Honda Accord? If people judged me, I was like, because my crew need trucks. I don't need a truck. I just need to get from point A to point B. But I had no car note, and it kept my debt down.
Yeah,
it kept my debt down.
Absolutely. for sure. Let's talk about your vision for your company. If you look out 5 years, 10 years, what kind of vision do you have for Citi Approved?
My vision for Citi Approved, I would love to hire more women in the construction field that have the trades and give those women an opportunity that most doors are closed. I desire to stay small, but small business by SBA standard is that you don't make $100 million within 3 years.
Right.
So, because I'm, in 10 years, I'll be 65 years old. So looking at it from a place at 70, definitely grow the company. And my son, if he likes it, he can take over and run it. But also with small, I'm able to, the set-asides, the federal government is the only entity that puts set-asides out there. And I'm just very successful at it, and it's profitable.
Yeah. Very good. So we talked in break about your favorite type projects, and we had talked about all the different things that you've done throughout the years, and you told me that it was really the storm damage work that you enjoyed. Tell us why that is.
I love helping. And
that's your disease to please.
Right? I love to help. But it also gives me an opportunity because the insurance companies, a lot of the insurance doesn't understand the process. They don't understand, okay, they gave me $30,000 and it's not enough. Well, hey, let me take a look at the paperwork. No cost. And some are intimidated because they think you're looking at the paperwork so you can see how much the insurance paid. But I'm like, hey, if we're going to start a negotiation, let's start the negotiation at what the insurance company should pay. So I'm able to offer them free estimating experience where a public adjuster is going to charge them 10 to 14%, lawyer 40%.
Yeah.
As their contractor, they get that service for free.
A couple of things wrapping up here. If you're giving advice to a young entrepreneur who's listening to this episode that's contemplating starting their own business, when you look back through your long journey in business and what you've been through, what advice would you give that entrepreneur about getting started?
Understanding the money management side. Understanding that when we're self-employed, we're going to have peaks and valleys. So you may have a strong 2022 and you have a weak 2023. And being able to keep your doors open and cash flow your jobs I try to do it without laying people off. Because I know in my industry I'm busy for about 7 months. So my advice would be, I'm big on understanding your bottom line.
Yeah.
And relationships. Most of the doors that open up is relationships. Establish good, healthy relationships.
Yeah. Very good. So it's interesting, when I was reading about you, I love the story about you getting in business. It was that I'm going to take care of people. Right. Your mother's friend who was taken advantage by 2 contractors post-Katrina. So I think that says a lot about who you are, right? And that's where you started. Mm-hmm. So in the 17, 18, 20 years you've been in business, how has that changed? How would you define yourself today? When you look back on that young lady who started the business all those years ago, how has that changed?
That's a good question.
I'm not sure that it has.
My coach would say it haven't.
No, but in a good way. In a good way, because you answered the question, previously about the work that you loved to do the most, which was helping people. Well, that's right where you started.
It is. And that was the reason I started.
And when I wrote that question down, I didn't know the answer, obviously. but I think you've kind of defined that. But is that how you would see it today?
Yes.
Not that you haven't grown in other ways.
But yes, I am still that same Ingrid with no experience from 2006 when I started my company. I'm still that same person today.
That wanted to help others.
That want to help.
You've got the experience now, but you've which says a lot about who you are. It's an underlining, defining statement about who you are and what your company represents. And I think that's pretty bold, pretty strong.
Yeah, I do it for, I want to keep food on the table, but I do it because it's rewarding. It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Anything else we need to know about Ingrid Thibodeaux before we sign off?
Well, Ingrid is a mother, a grandmother, a business owner, a mentor, a coach, and very dedicated. And I think that about, it's a lot more to me, but that, that gives a little description of who I am, a good friend, fun.
I can see that. And a beautiful smile.
And thank you. And I always say if I could get $1 every time I heard that, I could retire.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end. Ingrid, I appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, and continued success in all you do.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ingrid told a story at break that I forgot to bring up, but she had run across an old yearbook, and they'd asked the question, what will you be doing in 10 years? And she said that she would own her own business, which she had completely forgotten that she had said that, but look at her now. I loved Ingrid's story of doing it afraid. She was going to get in business having no experience, and she just committed herself that she was going to do it afraid. But she learned that her key to success was out-servicing her competition, which has served her well. I love her vision of employing more women and giving women opportunities in business and being a mentor for them in that way. So we really appreciate Ingrid coming in and sharing her story. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.